Marhaba. Today I'm going to speak your language because my message is directed to the Western and international audience. My fellow Arabs can read the subtitles below. Irrespective, the idea is that I had been busy not basically posting any videos on my YouTube channel for the past 3 weeks or so because I have been busy covering the southern Lebanese front. I'm a former veteran war reporter. I do cover hot zones as well as I'm a macroeconomist. So at any point you can call me a political economist. Irrespective, today's video is going to be about Israel's economic losses because I was the first to actually start speaking about this matter 5 weeks ago. And then we continue until today. So today's update is that Israel's economy and finances have sustained massive losses, be it directly or indirectly, and it has surpassed now $200 billion. Whoever tell you is that the number is much less than that, then they're either lying to you or they don't know about economy at all. The idea is the Israeli economy, according to S&P, I'm going to start with the newest number. S&P has revised literally the deficit for Israel for the year 2023 to 5.3% of the GDP. If the GDP is at anywhere around $488 billion, then that deficit is running up to $25.7 billion. Let's not talk also about the actual deficit during the month of October, according to S&P. S&P had estimated it at $6 billion. That's roughly around sevenfold what it was October 2022. Let's not forget that the Israeli Bureau of Statistics actually said that at any point, 1 in 3 businesses in Israel have shut down or dropped to 20% of its capacity. So we're talking about 1/3 of the economy being hindered at the moment. The economy is worth $488 billion. You can imagine the amount of losses. 300,000 reservists or more, 320,000 at some estimates, have been pulled out from various economic sectors to join the army. That means we have less productivity in the market, and that basically corresponds to about 3.4 to 4% of the total GDP. And we're talking about around, let's say, $25 billion as well, or give or take. Now, the Israelis have been bragging that they have added 57,000 to 60,000 jobs, basically, in the month of October, but they failed to tell the people that those were actually the unemployed persons who were pulled to the reserves. So when you pull them to the reserves, they are registered as reservists and not as unemployed people. Now imagine if this war prolongs and it escalates, and later on, those reservists want to go back to their sectors to work in. Most of it basically had shut down. So the idea is we will have higher unemployment going forward. Now we haven't also started calculating the impact. Watch this. We haven't started calculating the impact. And I'm laughing because it's hilarious how they try to hide the numbers. They try to calculate the impact of this war on tourism. It had dropped to near zero at one point or another. So that's another 3.5 to 4% of the GDP. We're talking about no less than $20 to $25 billion as well in losses. Foreign direct and indirect investments that came to Israel or were supposed to come to Israel over the past period, and those who were completely frozen or shut down in Israel, amount to over $30 billion. Add to it the Israeli investments that were shut down or frozen, the projects that are to be. We're not talking about the projects that are already on the ground. That's also tens of billions of dollars. Now, if you want to add to that, around $20 billion, $18 to $20 billion of money transferred from the Israeli banks abroad, plus $8 to $10 billion of money withdrawn from the banks and kept with foreigners and Israelis in Israel at the moment, plus the amount of the billions of dollars that the government has been paying to house in hotels and rented apartments. The 200,000 Israelis who are now displaced from the northern settlements and the Gaza Enclave settlements with their food and water intake and their medical needs and their other needs as well. Basically, that's also adds a strain on the economy, the finances of the Israeli treasury. So that might, at one point or another, explain why the Israelis have been begging for aid under the table without telling their people that. It's met with basically deaf ears in the US. $14.3 billion worth of aid, not all of it financial, by the way. had been tabled by the Senate in the US. So basically, the US Congress have rejected the bill to fund Israel or aid it in its war against the Palestinians, its genocide against the Palestinians in Gaza. And at the same time, the European nations are bankrupt enough, their economy is barely moving at any point, and they are underarmed, so they cannot help the Israelis with more money. If it's coming from the private sector, then the private sector will basically, this will be a loss to it at any point or another. Now, we're not also calculating the working hand that has left the country, and basically when things go back to somehow normal, you'd find it really hard to replace them because nobody wants to come back to a hot zone. And we're also not calculating the fact that there's a brain drain from the Israeli community abroad, one-way ticket. Over 5,000 families have left or basically booked to leave. So we're talking, if like it's 5 persons per family, then 5 times 5,000, that's 25,000 people. That's not a small number to replace at one point or another. Then we go into the army finances, and this explains why the central bank governor in Israel, Amir Yaron, had met with Defense Minister Gallant recently. It's because the Israeli government had been ramping up a huge bill on its military expenses. We're talking about taxpayers in Israel being basically dished with a bill of around $27,000 per flight hour for an F-16 and about $42,000 per flight hour for an F-35, aside from the $1 billion that go into basically the missiles for the Iron Dome, for their Apaches, for their Falcon fighter jets, as well as the artillery. And we're not talking about the mercenary, who amounted to about $20 million per month. We're talking about 1,300 mercenaries, down from 1,500. And by this week, they're down to about 1,150. And they take about $3,000 to $8,000 a week each. So per month, it's a give or take $20 million. And of course, there are other expenses aside from the corruption that had been eating away the Israeli funding for the longest time, since 1996 until now, since actually Benjamin Netanyahu went into politics in Israel. Now, add to that, over $21 billion that were pumped into the economy as forex sales, direct forex sales, to support the Israeli shekel that has lost a double digit in its value over the past period. And I'm not talking basically since October 7 until now. Since October 7 until now, it had lost about 5%, give or take. And since the January 2023 until now, it had lost about 17% of its value. The funny part is that with the pumping of over $21 billion into the market to support the shekel managed to drop down under 4% to 3.8, under 4 shekels to the dollar to 3.8 shekels to the dollar. However, the whole package that the central bank had announced earlier last month, that's going to pump about $30 billion in the market to support the shekel, aside from $15 billion in form of swaps as well to support the shekel. We haven't seen its total impact yet. When it runs out in the next 2 weeks, basically, that's when the shekel might, and if the war prolongs, actually, that's when we might see the shekel dropping all the way to $5 a shekel, 5 shekels a dollar, or $7 shekels a dollar at one point or another. So when we're talking about almost $21 billion pumped directly into the market from the central bank, that's about 10% of the Israeli central bank's foreign reserves, which amount to about $198 billion to $200 billion. Now, the central bank had at one point or another issued contradicting numbers, one time saying that they had pumped in $8 billion. That was 2 weeks ago. And basically the week after that, they said like, no, we pumped $7.2 billion. So anyway, I'll keep you with that. You can go back to my former videos on basically the Israeli economic losses, and then you can add up the numbers as well. Take care, and until next time, see you later.